Hey everyone, RemanX here with a very important video. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the resources that I think a lot of us hit with bottlenecks. And we're going to talk about, I think, one of the biggest ones that I think is important, and it's actually kind of the centerpiece of the content I try to provide. And remember, I do things so you don't have to, and one of them is spend t4s. Now, for the majority of my time, I've been in a top 10, 20 alliance. And so I've gotten more T4s than the average bear. And so what that means is I do a lot of testing to help determine which T4s are absolutely necessary for a team. We'll talk about a team that I spent a bunch of them on to see how they would function was Hydra. Back in the day, I gave a bunch of Hydra recommendations. And realistically, they never paid off, with rare exception. Because the power that you had to put into them to make them a top tier war defense team, unless you were at the pinnacle of the game, was just not worth it. So what I want to say to you is you're overspending your T4s. Now, some of you guys will be like, no, Rem, I've got 14,000. No, not you. You in general, like you the players of Marvel Strike Force. And so there are very few T4s that I think that are absolutely necessary to make a character or a kit work or a team work. Although I will say that more of them have come out recently, that you're seeing about 5 or 6 T4s on a team to make them function in their optimal way. Now, the idea behind this is one of the characters or one of the teams that I think probably comes to mind is Shadowlands. Now, Shadowlands is a little bit different than some of the other teams, because what I will tell you is you could invest T4s in the team to make them win more. And we'll talk about what that means in a minute. So from the very basics of the team, we have characters that existed for a while. Some of these abilities we probably had T4'd already, and some of them we thought we might want to. And so I will say this, and without naming specifics, I don't like lists of T4s because I think some of this is going to be roster dependent. Telling you to put T4s on your 2 red star, 3 star white tiger may not get you the win that you think you're going to get. And so it has to be something that you evaluate very carefully as an individual. And so we're going to talk about what to do to determine if you need to put a T4 in an ability. And we'll talk about kind of how to know if they're essential and the like. So a couple of key things are whenever a T4 ability affects speed, these are typically ones that have high priorities, period. So you should always take those into account when they affect either speed on spawn or speed on turn. All these different things, thinking like long shots passive, Zemo's passive, all of these are high priority because of the fact that they affect the most important thing in the game, and that's making sure that your team goes when it needs to. And so speed is that function of that. The next part about that is, so on Shadowlands, there's really, I'm going to say this, 4 T4s that I think are necessary. And I know that's going to be crazy because you guys have seen different lists. Passive on White Tiger, passive on Daredevil, passive on Night Nurse, and either the special, but probably the ult on Night Nurse. So passive Daredevil. And so that's going to differ from a lot of what you guys probably see from other folks here. Now, I put a lot of T4s on here to test them out. So if you guys watch my streams back and you're like, well, Rem has it. Well, I'm telling you, I did it so you guys don't have to. On the other end, if somebody tells you that you should and they don't have it, you probably should stop taking their advice. Because either they didn't test it or they told you something was vital, but it wasn't important enough for them to use it. And here's how I know this. I test it out myself. A lot of times I will take a team into a situation without the tier 4 to see if they'll win without it. If they win without it, I put a little check mark in my column to determine how much of it was affected by RNG and how much of it was actually a function of the T4 being absent. If they lost, understanding how they lost in that category, what actually specifically happened for the action, I evaluated if the T4 was enough to give me the edge or the victory. That's why in the scenario with Marauders versus Shadowlands, the Night Nurse Ultimate is so important, because if you get unlucky and they clone your Moon Knight, which is literally a 20% chance to happen, unless you do the passive on Electra, which I think loses more often than not, you will have a chance to lose and wipe pretty easily without the ability to flip the buffs on the first turn. But that's it. So there are very, very, very few T4s that you should be investing on characters unless you need them to win in scenarios. And so the problem you have is, and we're going to talk about this in all of the content I'm providing over the next few weeks here, you have to build a wide roster in MSF 2021. Year 3 means you can't just have an arena team or one specific raid team. You need to have trait-based teams to be able to push endgame content. Now, if the data mines are true, they'll be moving Silver Surfer shards down a little bit, but building your roster to be able to overcome problems is going to be important. And if, let's say, you have an underpowered team, adding T4s to the team may help you overcome some of the lack of stars or red stars. See that specifically in some of the Doom raids. Now, that being said, one of the problems is a lot of times when the Doom raids came out, people just didn't have the T4s because they had to build characters that they just hadn't focused on. And so if you don't have those T4s when you need them, then the game feels like T4s are a bottleneck. Now, they are probably one of the most important resources that we just don't get enough of. Unless you're Platinum 2 or higher, you're probably, in the course of a month, not seeing very many. And depending on what raids you can do, the same is a problem. So it is very important that you take stock of what really needs to be T4'd. And the rule of thumb is never T4 a team if it does what you need it to do. I'll say this right now. This is the least important leaderboard in the game. Single team power is literally we call it the EP leaderboard. It means nothing. It means that you've overinvested in characters that probably have little to no impact on your roster. Period. End of story. Even if you got exceptionally lucky with red stars, investing in those T4s in them, unless you're in the number 1 or number 2 alliance in the game, and even then, I would be hard pressed to tell you would have enough T4s to get everything you'd want to get done. So it is very, very important that you take stock and use them in the proper way. So as teams come out, you're going to see that I've taken Colleen over here and brought these over. A war defense teams is really hard to assess what you'll see from the team if the T4s are actually making that much of a difference. Well, the good news is we've taken some teams that don't have them. We've taken a look at some of the stars. We've got a few other content creators that are going to help me identify the really essential. So I'm going really hard on Colleen from both a star and red star. Well, I'll probably have to promote her because you guys will see that there's 4 red star here. But we're going to see the impact that these T4s actually have, if any. She's probably the star of the defensive show anyway, and her T4s the bleeds, as we saw what happened in some of the footage when the Black Order challenged them and Thanos was simply just deleted by her bleeds before he took a turn. So there's that to account for as well. So do not waste T4s. There's probably going to be teams down the road that are going to demand more of your T4s, cough, cough, heroes for hire. And if you've wasted them on teams that are already winning for you, especially on war offense, then you're probably going to wind up behind. Remember, I do things so you don't have to. check out our town hall format every Wednesday and Sunday coming to Twitch. And I hope to see you guys there. Have an awesome day.